Smart, smart, do. We are the children, the children of God. Come, come, come. We change our world. We have what it takes to do it smart and make it smart. Welcome to our Smart Do.
Hello children, welcome back to another exciting episode of Social Studies. This is grade 4, looking at an interesting topic known as human rights. Now, as we start, we need to understand what are human rights, okay? So human rights, these are privileges or freedom that should be enjoyed by every citizen or every person belonging to a particular country, okay? So human rights are the definition or the meaning, as we just said, this freedom or privileges that should be enjoyed by every citizen. Okay? Now, that is why when you hear somebody saying that this is my right, it means these are the freedoms. The freedom or the privileges that he should be enjoying as being part of a citizen of a certain country. For example, we could look at some certain human rights that we have in our country of Kenya. Okay? Some human rights, some part of the human rights that we have. Number one, every child has a right, okay, to a balanced diet, eating good meal, okay? Balanced diet, which means has both proteins, carbohydrates, okay, the starch. Now, we also have what we have right to clean environment. Every citizen has a right to a clean environment, okay? Now, for our children in Kenya, they have a right to education. We want to thank our former president, Mwai Kibaki, for offering free primary education for our pupils, whereby they were able to freely and extensively enjoy the right to free education. We also have a right to clothing, okay, whereby people should enjoy the right of wearing decently, wearing properly, okay. Another one we have is the right to shelter. We also have a right to security, whereby the government provides security during the night. So these are among the various human rights that we have, whereby you could take anyone to court or sue anyone to court if he tries to violate one of these rights. Now, I would like us to look at forms of child abuse. What are the forms of child abuse? Forms of child abuse. Child abuse. So as we look at child abuse, okay, this is where a child, when his rights are violated, okay, that's when we tend to have what we call abuse, okay. A child can be abused in various ways, okay. Now, as we start, there are certain cultural practices, okay. So when we look at certain cultural practices, whereby these practices, they were done in the past, okay? So even as we talk about culture, whereby we maintain good culture, there are also practices or there are cultural activities that are done that are not good, they are bad. Whereby these practices should not be followed, okay? Or people should not go with it. And these cultural practices, they fall under what we call child abuse. So number one of these cultural practices is what we call early marriages, whereby you find in the past a child Probably in the past they could say a small girl at the age of around 10, 12 years, they could say that is a mature girl. And probably from there, a child would be told not to continue with his or her education and to get married. So through these early marriages, most of these girls will not continue with education, whereby now they will start being parents, whereas they are still children. Now, with these kind of marriages, they are not good, whereby these children would tend to be abused by the partner or the partner that have been engaged to. Now, these early marriages are not good. Number two, cultural practice that should be discarded is what we call, or is known as the FGM, which is the female genital mutilation. Now, this FGM is the circumcision of girls. It was being done in the past where girls were circumcised. And through this FGM, as a cultural practice, now, probably one of the reasons they would talk about FGM, they thought that through FGM, the girls would be able to settle at homes, they will not go out. Now, through this female genital mutilation, it has no any belief, or there is no whatsoever thing that FGM or the advantages of it has brought to the society, whereby this FGM should be disbanded or discarded. So, FGM, the female genital mutilation, should be discarded, and it's a form of child abuse, whereby they go through a lot of torture through this circumcision, whereby they also tend to lose a lot of blood, and some of them mostly actually die due to bleeding. Now, number three cultural practice was what we call forced marriages. Now, the difference between early marriage and forced marriage. Forced marriage, early marriage is when people get married at an early age. Forced marriage it's when a girl will be forced to marry a certain person. Now, the forced marriages is a form of child abuse, whereby the father will take the daughter to a certain old man, because he has a lot of wealth, and since the man needs money from the wealthy man, would now decide to get dowry due to from the marriage itself. So this forced marriage was a cultural practice that should be discarded from our society. Now, as we look at other forms of child abuse, another form of child abuse that we have, apart from the cultural one we have what we call as caning, whereby excessive caning, whereby we find that some schools, on some certain schools or some certain sectors, children are caned excessively, making them have marks on their body. That's what we call child abuse. A child should not be caned to a such extent. Now, when you have a caning a child to such an extent, that's what we call child abuse. So, children should not be guided in such a way, whereas they should be counseled, talked to ensure that they're able to understand what they're being told. Number two, another form of child abuse is where we have harsh and abusive language. Harsh and abusive language. You find this is used mostly in the ghettos, whereby they use very bad language, harsh, abusive language, talking to their children. Actually, it demoralizes the child, brings low esteem to a child when always talking in a very harsh and a very abusive language to a child. It's a form of child abuse. Actually, you are torturing the child through the mind as you talk such abusive language to a child. Another one, we have mistreatment from children, from other children. When we talk about mistreatment, there is a term known as bullying. Okay? Bullying. When you find these other older kids mistreating the smaller kids, we have what is known as bullying, whereby they are made, the older children will make them to do work for them, And that's what we call bullying. Actually, it's mistreatment where they are treated badly by the other children. Number 4, we have what we call making them to work, okay, and earn a pay. That is what we call child labor. Child labor. When you make a child to go out and earn an income, or making him bring money to you at home, okay, whereas that child should be studying, that's what we call child labor, okay. Now, very quickly we look at the effects of child abuse. What are the effects? Just look at an example of them. Effects of child labor. When you harass a child or bring his esteem down, what do you think you are doing? Okay? So there are some of the things. Some of them will tend to drop out of school. So drop out of school. Okay? So through this mistreatment, excessive caning, a child will end up hating the school, dropping out of school, and that's the case. Now, another one, we have what we call early pregnancies. Okay? For the girls, through these forced marriages, through these early marriages, this child will tend to bring home pregnancy. Okay? They become pregnant. Okay? So through this child abuse, these are the effects that you get. Another one is that children perform below expectation. Below expectation. Due to this excessive caning, probably, you don't expect a child to be performing good. So these are the effects of child abuse. So let us as parents look at this, and also as children, so that we become better learners as we work together. Thank you so much.